In the heart of West Africa, where the winds of change sweep across dusty roads and crowded markets, the name Ibrahim Traoré has become one of the most talked about in recent years. A young soldier who rose to power in Burkina Faso, Traoré came to represent something rare in modern politics, a symbol of defiance against old colonial structures, a man willing to stand tall where others bowed. His youth, his fiery rhetoric, and his determination to challenge foreign dominance gave him the aura of a revolutionary leader, the type of figure people hadn't seen in decades. For many Africans, he was a hero. For much of the West, particularly France, he was a thorn in their side. And for Americans watching from afar, he was a figure to study carefully, because his choices, his alliances, and his enemies could shape the entire region's future. Yet behind every leader's story lies the shadows of betrayal, the kind that can come not from the outside, but from those closest within their circle. And in Ibrahim Traoré's story, the betrayal that shook him came not from a stranger, but from a man who once called himself his friend. The story begins long before the coup that put Traoré in power. As a young officer, threatened, he wasn't a man who had grown up in luxury or privilege. He trained, fought, and lived among his soldiers, and that authenticity made him respected. Among the men who knew him back then was a fellow officer, someone who had risen through the same ranks, endured the same long nights of watch duty, and fought the same battles. Their bond was forged in uniform, over dusty boots and shared rations, the kind of friendship that seems unbreakable when forged in the trenches. They trusted each other with their lives. Soldiers often speak of brotherhood, and in those days, this man was not just a colleague for Traoré. He was like family. But history has a way of testing loyalties, and what seems like iron can sometimes melt under the heat of ambition, jealousy, and foreign influence. When Traoré led the coup in 2022, shocking the region by overthrowing the government and declaring that Burkina Faso would chart its own path, this friend was among those who celebrated. The crowds in Ouagadougou cheered as Traoré spoke of sovereignty, of independence, of a Burkina Faso free from the grip of foreign powers that had drained Africa for centuries. But in the shadows of that celebration, cracks began to appear. Power does strange things to men. For some it becomes a responsibility, for others it becomes a drug. And for this friend, the taste of being close to power began to change him. At first, the signs were subtle. Small disagreements behind closed doors. Questions that seemed innocent but carried an undertone of doubt. Why should Traoré be the one at the front of the movement? He would wonder. Why should one man carry the vision when others had shed blood too? These questions are not unusual in politics, but in his heart, they were not just questions. They were seeds of resentment. Resentment that would eventually be watered by outsiders who understood how dangerous Traoré's rise was for their interests. Foreign intelligence agencies, particularly those with deep ties in the region, know one thing well: you don't always have to fight a leader head-on. Sometimes, the easiest way to weaken a man is to turn those closest to him against him. And so, whispers began. Contacts were made. Meetings in secret corners, phone calls at odd hours, the promise of money and influence dangled like bait before a hungry man. This friend, once a brother in arms, now found himself in the crosshairs of temptation. And slowly he began to listen. He began to entertain the thought that maybe betraying Traoré was not betrayal at all, but survival, maybe even opportunity. The betrayal came in layers, like peeling back the skin of an onion. At first, it was small leaks of information, movements of soldiers, whispers of meetings, hints of Traoré's plans. Harmless at first glance, but to those watching from outside, it was gold. Each piece of intelligence helped shape a larger picture of how to undermine Traoré. Each word this man shared became a crack in the armor of Burkina Faso's young leader. And yet, all the while, he would still stand beside Traoré in public, still call him brother, still eat at his table. To the people, he was loyal. To the world, he was trusted. But to himself, he was already lost. For Traoré, the realization came slowly. And leaders are often the last to believe that betrayal comes from within. They look for enemies in foreign capitals, in armed groups, in political opposition. Rarely do they look at the man sitting right beside them. And so, for months, Traoré carried on, never suspecting that his closest friend was feeding his enemies the very information they needed. But betrayal has a way of revealing itself, because no traitor can hide forever. The turning point came when an assassination attempt nearly succeeded. Traoré's convoy was ambushed on a stretch of road outside Ouagadougou. The attack was precise, too precise to be random. The attackers knew the timing, the route, the formation of vehicles. It was a miracle that Traoré survived, and as investigations unfolded, the threads began to tie back to the man he trusted. The discovery hit him like a hammer. To realize that someone you once called brother had sold your life for promises of wealth and influence is a wound deeper than any bullet. For Americans watching this story, there is a clear lesson. Loyalty and betrayal are not just African problems, they are universal. The history of the United States is full of examples of betrayal, from the Revolutionary War to modern politics. Benedict Arnold is a name Americans know well, the man who turned against his own revolution for personal gain. And in Traoré's story, this man became Burkina Faso's Benedict Arnold. The question then became, what would Traoré do? How do you respond when the man who betrayed you is someone who once stood by your side? The fallout was explosive. When the truth emerged, the people of Burkina Faso were furious. To betray Traoré was to betray their nation, their struggle for freedom, their hope for a future without foreign chains. Crowds demanded justice. They wanted the traitor punished, not just for the betrayal of a man, but for the betrayal of an entire people. And in that moment, Traoré faced not just the question of justice, but also of leadership. Would he show mercy, or would he show strength? His decision was swift. The traitor was arrested, paraded before the nation, and exposed for what he was. The evidence of his dealings with foreign agents, the money, the promises, all laid bare. In exposing him, Traoré not only rid himself of a dangerous enemy, but also sent a message to the world: betrayal would not be tolerated. Burkina Faso would not be weakened from within. For America, watching this unfold carried its own significance. The United States has long understood that in the great game of geopolitics, trust and betrayal often decide the fate of nations. Allies who betray are more dangerous than open enemies. And in the chaos of Africa's shifting political landscape, Traoré's survival, despite betrayal, shows the importance of vigilance. Just as America once had to defend itself from those who sought to destroy its revolution from within, Burkina Faso now fights the same battle for sovereignty. But the story doesn't end there. Betrayal leaves scars, and for Traoré, and the scar was not just political, it was personal. To lose a brother to treachery is to lose a part of yourself. It hardens you, makes you wary, less trusting. Some say it made Traoré colder, more distant from those around him. Others say it made him stronger, more determined to lead without leaning too heavily on others. Whatever the case, the betrayal changed him. The man who betrayed him faded into disgrace. Once a soldier respected by many, he became a symbol of cowardice, a warning to others who might think of following his path. And yet, even as he disappeared from public life, his betrayal continued to echo in the halls of Burkina Faso's leadership. Because betrayal, once it happens, is never truly forgotten. It becomes a story retold, a lesson repeated, a shadow that never fully disappears. For pro-American audiences, this story resonates on a deeper level. It is a reminder that freedom is fragile, and that betrayal often comes when vigilance slips. It is a lesson that America itself has lived many times, whether in war, politics, or diplomacy. Trust is earned, but it must also be protected. And leaders like Traoré, who face betrayal not just from enemies abroad but from friends within, remind us of the cost of leadership. It is not just about vision and courage, but about surviving the knives that come from the closest hands. In the end, the question remains, was this man truly a traitor, or just a victim of circumstance, of temptation, of a game larger than himself? To the people of Burkina Faso, the answer is clear. He chose betrayal. He chose personal gain over national honor, and in doing so, he sealed his fate. For Traoré, the betrayal was a test, one that he survived, but at a cost. And for America, watching from across the ocean, The story is a powerful reminder of the eternal truth in the battle for freedom. The greatest danger is not always the enemy before you, but the friend beside you. And so the story of the man who betrayed Ibrahim Traoré becomes not just a tale of Africa, but a universal story, a human story. It is the story of trust and betrayal, of loyalty and ambition, of the eternal struggle between honor and temptation. A story that echoes from Burkina Faso to the halls of America, reminding us all that in the end, the line between friend and traitor is thinner than we think.